Hi, this is Andrew Markus. Welcome to Film Music Mentor. So you have a comedy. It's shot, directed, written so well. It's edited, but it's falling short a little bit. There are four music mistakes that most often happen with comedies, and I'm going to show you how to avoid them or alter them. All right, so the top four music mistakes in comedy. The first mistake that's made a lot is not giving the audience permission to laugh. The audience has to know that they can laugh at what they're seeing. If they're in a theater and anything's questionable, they may hold back out of being self conscious, not wanting to look insensitive amongst other people in a theater or in screening room, or maybe even just by themselves. They may doubt the laughter. So it's really important that the audience knows your intention. You made the film, you know what you mean, but the audience just may not. They haven't lived with the material for months or years, and they sometimes need help in this area. So let's take an example. You have a political movie. Let's say you want to do a farce, political farce, let's say. So you have somebody talking, say a congressman or something, and they're talking very seriously. Their words are very serious, and you mean this in a funny way. Well, then you're going to want the music to be a little quirky, maybe a little dopey, a little silly, to show that we can laugh at this. Consequently, if you have a verbiage that's very quirky in and of itself, and the acting is very earnest, you may want the music to be earnest with the acting. So there's usually, and this is not a rule, it's just a guideline, that something should be amiss. Something should take us out of the reality of seriousness. Otherwise, people could watch your film and think that you're doing something dramatic and be very confused, and that upsets an audience. If they think they're going to see something funny, they want to know it's funny, and they want to be able to laugh uninhibitedly. Now, I'm not saying this is in your writing or in your acting or your directing or anything like that. I'm just saying this as a musical thing. We need to play the music against what's there in a certain way, and this is different in every situation. One example, I did a film. I had the great pleasure and fortune of doing a film called The Lost Cat Corona. It starred Ralph Macchio and David Zayas, and the film is a dark comedy. And Ralph Macchio gets himself into situations that are dangerous and could potentially harm him. And when talking with the director, this was a little bit of a, how do we go about this? And I said, so when in doubt, you want them to laugh, right? And he said, yes, I want them to laugh. And I wasn't the first composer on this. Someone else had started, and then they came to me. That happens a lot with films, so it's not an unusual situation. And so they had cut the opening of the film to this swing piece, um, like electro swing. It's swing music, but it's sort of like EDM combined. It's a newer sort of form. So the director loved this, and he thought it worked great in the opening, and he said maybe the score could be this way. So I wrote music that was very sparse, very swing-like. It wasn't so much electro swing, but it took some of those aspects, and it played really well. And that's going to bring me into, I'm going to use the same film example for the next number two, is film music in comedies must breathe. Music in comedies have to breathe. You can't just slap something down, let it play out, and expect it to keep your funny material funny. It's going to drag it into the ground. So what I mean by breathe is it has to move along with the comedic beats. So in this particular film, Lost Cat Corona, when we use the swing music, it was constantly being built up and taken down. Instruments were added, taken away, and it was done very much to the rhythm of the cut and the comedy, not in a Mickey Mouse cartoonish way. The music had lots of changes. It didn't stay exactly the same for too long. And I think it worked really well. You could watch the film and you could be like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But I was really happy with the results, and so are the people involved. So it's really important that music breathe. It's important that the music doesn't stay static, because comedy's never static. It's all about timing and breath. And scoring a comedy is actually really hard, because you have to subtly make these changes. It's not a hit him over the head kind of thing. You have to go back and see how it feels and see how it plays. Um, and you need to have a sense of comedic timing to write music like this, which I think I do. Um, so that's the second reason. The third reason that music can bring down a comedy is musical comic conventions are ignored or misused. So there's a lot of conventions, and what I mean by convention is just something that's been used throughout time. So jazz is something that works a lot in comedy. People hear jazz and they think, wow, I can laugh at this. It's something that's been established over a very long period of time. Should you use jazz? Look, I'm not saying you should, but it's just something to know and keep in mind. If your film's falling flat, maybe you need to use a musical convention. Maybe you want to purposefully go against the convention or purposefully avoid the convention, and that's totally cool. The only issue that could arise is so much of comedy, whether it's the comedy itself or the music involved, has to do with expectation. You set up an expectation and then you alter it a little bit. So sometimes if you alter things too much on the music end, it could ruin your jokes. The last problem that often occurs with the music in comedies is that there's a musical reference that's a joke that's just too obscure. You need broad musical concepts to make a joke. Let me say that a little more clearly. So, if you're making a musical reference, uh, it has to be something widely known. So, if you're going to use a Psycho reference, I can't remember the movie, but there was some movie where a guy is bringing a newspaper to someone, and he's like doing this like in the bathtub in Psycho, and they've Psycho either the Psycho music or something like it. Everybody gets that because even if you've never seen Psycho, you know that music. Or Rocky. Rocky's music is so universal, so profound, so loved and well known that if you have a guy doing push ups or running or whatever it is, or running up steps, and you have something that sounds like Rocky, that's going to play. Or something where you do homage to the Jaws, that's going to work because everybody knows that even if they didn't see Jaws, they still know that music. Um, and yes, these references have been used a lot, but they work because there are expectations that that are in the zeitgeist, if you will. And if we alter them too much, it can play against us. So the one other aspect in this category of musical conventions is sometimes we use a song as a joke. We'll use the lyric of a song in a joke, and if you do that, it's important to hit it and then get out. If you keep letting it play, then it doesn't really make sense. And I would also urge you to reconsider um, doing that if you can, because it's a lot of trouble to get a song. It's a lot of cost, expense, manpower or woman power, getting permission, and there's a likelihood you can't get what it is that you're trying to get. So if you if you can avoid putting in a piece of music as a cute, quick joke, I would. One place I think it works brilliantly is in Mrs. Doubtfire. They're making up Robin Williams to be Mrs. Doubtfire, and they use Aerosmith's "Dude Looks Like a Lady," which is like a quick one-two punch, funny thing. He looks like a lady, but because of the way that they're transforming him, that joke doesn't die. It builds and builds, and it's fantastic. But that's not always the case. So just to be aware of these four things that are that could sink your comedy or can make it soar. The first thing is permission to laugh. The audience has to know, hey, this is funny. Two, the music has to breathe. It can't stay static. It has to move with the beats and the rhythms of the comedy and the film itself. Three, you want to make sure that you're aware of musical conventions, that you don't misuse them unless you do it on purpose for a reason. Um, Listen, artistic creativity is very important in films, and I'm not suggesting that you hinder that in any way. Just go into it knowing. That's all I'm saying. And lastly, if you're going to make a musical reference as a joke, make it broad. Don't make it obscure, except in the one instance that you want to set up maybe a special little joke for super fans or something like that. That you know that's done and that makes sense. But I would avoid making any jokes that rely on the musical reference unless they're very broad. Well, that's it. Thank you. This is Andrew Markus. Thank you for joining Film Music Mentor, and I'll see you next time.